All right, thank you for that reminder, Sherry. All right, get to the slides here. All right. Is everybody seeing that now?
Yep.
Awesome, awesome. So this is just a little bit of background on Sherry and I. We're not going to leave this up here very long, and we don't need to read it all, but we are recording this, so we wanted to have it available for other people that might see this on the recording, so they know a little bit about who we are. But obviously, I'm very excited to be sharing the virtual stage with Dr. Sherry Buffington, who I've known now for a little over 20 years, and I consider one of my primary teacher and coach and mentor in the area of human development and people development. So I'm so excited to do this with her today.
That works for me too, towards you.
Yeah. So to get started, we named this the ABCs of emotional intelligence leadership development because we think that the following ABCs are really the three foundational building blocks for those two items, emotional intelligence leadership development, because everything starts with awareness. Once we become aware, we become more understanding, more accepting, more kind towards ourselves, and then we can have more awareness, understanding, acceptance, and kindness towards others, to then lead to better choices that we make for ourselves and others. And everything about life is about better choices or making choices. And we also always need to do everything we need to do with a caring attitude, a caring approach, both caring for ourselves as well as caring for other people. And if we do those things, if we become more aware, make better choices, and we care for other people, true leadership really begins with leading yourself well. And one of the things that we believe is that leading ourselves is we're the hardest person in the world to lead is ourselves. There's nothing we can really do to other people to lead them, but lead ourselves well and set a great example that inspires other people to want to follow.
And emotional intelligence does not develop if you're not leading yourself well.
Yeah, it all starts with ourselves.
So
share the screen or talk about this.
Yes, it all begins with awareness. I developed a pathway that I call the ACE effect because the reality is everything in life, everything that ever happens, every effect you will ever have follows this pathway. So we become aware of an option or an opportunity. And until we become aware, we don't know that we need to make a choice. We don't even know that a choice is required. So the awareness is the first stage. When we become aware, then we can then make a choice. And the greater the awareness, the better the choice. And when we make a choice, the choice is always to do the right thing or the wrong thing. And sometimes doing nothing is the wrong thing. And when we choose between the right thing or the wrong thing, do something or do nothing or do the wrong thing, we have another choice. That choice is then do or don't do. Do we do the right thing or not? Do we do the wrong thing or not? And an observation that one of our clients made is a very good observation. He said, he said that then what that means is that sometimes not doing the wrong thing is the right choice. Absolutely it is. But based on the choice that you make, if you follow that green line down from the right thing, the energy flow, so the E of the ACE effect is energy flow. The choice we make directs energy toward a positive or a negative outcome. That's the effect. And if we make the right choice, then energy flows in the right direction. If we make the wrong choice, energy flows toward a negative outcome. So every outcome, every effect you will ever have, personally or in dealing with other people, follows this pattern. And so it's a series of choices, and those choices can only occur in the presence of awareness. And that's the ACE effect. By the way, if you have any questions or comments along the way, we're certainly open to those all along the way. So if you have any questions as we go through these slides, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask.
The intention of this program is to be interactive and to kind of co-create the discussion. Sherry and I prepared some content or some slides here as kind of a jumping off point. But we really want to engage you guys from a questions, a thoughts, and examples perspective. feedback perspective as we go along.
And,
One
and
comment I'll make relative to this slide is at the very bottom of the chart is the energy effect, and everything is energy. We can feel our energy go up, we can feel our energy go down, or we can feel our energy get stuck. And so it's really about what effect does it have on the energy flow in our lives.
right. And
I think you see your hand raised up. Do you have a question?
Yeah, you mentioned that not doing the wrong thing leads to positive energy.
yeah,
But
that's
not
right.
Say that again.
That is the right choice. Not doing the wrong thing is the right choice.
But if there's no action or no, that doesn't mean that the right thing gets chosen. It's only if it's a this or that.
Every choice doesn't lead to action specifically. Every choice does lead to energy flow. So not doing the wrong thing, although you might not be taking action, not taking the action is the right thing to be doing in that moment. It prevents you from going in a negative direction. So if do you understand? If this isn't about action, it's about how your choice directs energy flow. And if it's directing it toward not doing the wrong thing, then you have avoided a problem. So it was the right choice in that you avoided an issue that was not beneficial to you.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Thank you for asking that. That's a really great question.
Awesome.
So the bottom box, they're saying a caring approach is always the right choice, because if that's the C for the ABCs, if we're coming from a place of caring about ourselves, caring about other people, caring about the long-term and the short-term effect, then we're going to be making the right choices.
People don't know, care how much you know until they know how much you care. Right. So caring is a hugely important aspect of making the right choices. So emotional intelligence, is a word that gets thrown, or a term that gets thrown around a lot, but want to make sure that everybody's on the same page from a definition or an understanding of what that is. So really, we define it as the ability to effectively recognize, understand, and manage your own emotions, and to recognize, understand, and effectively influence the emotions of others. But it all starts with awareness. Above all else, know thyself. So authentic self-awareness. I got to move something on my screen here. And awareness of what motivates, what the motivators, needs, and communication styles of others is essential to developing high levels of emotional intelligence.
And the wisdom of know thyself has been around forever. It goes all the way, actually all the way back to biblical times, but even before that, Plato said, above all else, know thyself. So that is essential to leadership, self-leadership, and it is essential to emotional intelligence. Know yourself.
My slide not moving. No slide.
There at the bottom, there you go, try that.
All right. So this is the inaugural session of this program, Emotional Intelligence and Leadership Development, the ABCs of. But this is really kind of a roadmap of where we're going over the course of the next year. So these are the different topics we're going to touch on. We're starting out with, under the relationship building aspect of things, which is motivation today on intrinsic versus extrinsic. Well, then we'll go into next month. We're going to go into influence, then assertiveness, and then integrity and honesty, dependability, decisiveness. All key aspects of relationship building. And then in future months, we'll go into self-leadership, what that means, effective communication, problem solving, change management, and vision delegation. So it really is going to be a program that's going to build over time. Each month will be kind of stand on its own, but also play a part of a bigger picture, a bigger roadmap here. So we're going to invite everybody to join us each and every month and participate in co-creating the conversation in the discussion.
And if you know other people that you think would benefit from greater emotional intelligence and leadership development, leadership in the workplace and leadership of self, please invite them, because we would like to keep growing this tribe and helping people to live in the world more effectively.
So what is extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation? So on the left here, you've got extrinsic motivation. These are all things that are external to us. So it's largely driven by money or bonuses, awards, gifts, incentives. So very financial oriented, or rewards or punishment. And the intrinsic motivation are things that reside inside of us, things like purpose, interest, autonomy, mastery, caring, pride, enjoyment, accomplishment, and curiosity. It's really things that drive us from more an emotional perspective. And extrinsic motivation really only influences our intrinsic motivators.
And oftentimes leaders do the extrinsic motivation because they don't take the time to get to know you well enough, or to know their team members well enough to know what intrinsically motivates them. And so then they make assumptions. And the assumptions are, well, if I give them more money, if I give them a lot of awards, if I provide bonuses, and the reality is that things like that, if they're Kevin, you had an example of getting
Oh yeah.
a
Yeah, so I was given basically sort of the gold watch one time, and after I received it, I kind of looked at it and I went, well, well, I don't even wear a watch. Why is that, a bonus or an award or a gift kind of thing as a reward for doing a good job? I don't even wear a watch. I haven't worn one for a year since I started carrying a cell phone, because I use my cell phone as my watch. And then my second thought was like, and if I was going to give a watch away, why would I give this an old fashioned analog watch when I'm more of a techie? I'd rather have an iWatch, an Apple Watch. So it really was kind of like, a demotivator. It's like, I don't wear one. I don't want one. If I was going to have one, I would want a different kind. So it almost had kind of a negative effect rather than a positive, motivation effect.
and the employer spent a lot of money on something that actually demotivated, actually caused Kevin to realize, this person doesn't know me at all. This person does not know, this leader does not know what's important to me.
Heck, I wouldn't even know who to give a watch like that to.
Yeah.
But if you did, if you knew who to give it to, wouldn't you want to find out if they even wanted it, if they liked watches, if they wore watches, what kind of watch they would want, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So that leads to some of the challenges with extrinsic motivation is that they tend to be expensive, right? They tend to have a short-term benefit. Tends to be a moving target in terms of what motivates people today versus yesterday or the day before. You have to continually escalate the requirements, right? It's you got to keep kind of up in the ante, right? This month or this year we give a bonus. Well, next year you got to give a bigger bonus, or it's like because you expect at least what you got last year, and the company had a better year. Um, and sometimes extrinsic motivators can become demotivators if they're not increased or sustained.
So you can't give somebody a bonus this year because you had a good year, and no bonus next year without it becoming a demotivator, because now they're going to be thinking, well, the company must be in trouble, or I didn't do a good enough job, or my employer doesn't appreciate me as much this year. That's where the brain goes. So the biggest problem is that they're expensive. The benefit short term. You have to keep doing it over and over and over, and it doesn't self-sustain.
Yeah. Versus intrinsic motivation tends to be inexpensive, has a longer term benefit because people become self-driven, self-sustaining, self-managed, if you will. So they become more self-reliant, self-directing, and the need for management is reduced because they are more self-reliant and self-directing.
So it's beneficial to the leader to know what would intrinsically motivate their people, because they do become self-driven, self-sustaining, and self-managed, reducing the need to manage them. So not only is it worthwhile to learn about the people that you lead so that you can provide intrinsic motivators, it's beneficial to them, and it's beneficial to you as a leader.
and it's beneficial to you as a leader to understand your own intrinsic motivations, right? So it's
Mhm.
not just about leading other people, it's about self-leadership, about leading yourself well as also. And if we don't take the time to really understand what motivates us internally, then we can burn out ourselves and become demotivated and lethargic. So there's,
This is a target a motivational target that I created a few years back. And looking at the levels of motivation, the things we need to be considering, thinking about. So you've got a basic human motivation, which is broad-based. All humans need it. Belonging, acceptance, significance, identity, and consideration. All humans need those. Generationally, you have to look a little closer. You have to pay more attention to know what generation somebody's from and what their values are. Our core values tend to be developed generationally. So that our cohorts pretty much lead us toward our core values. Family does too, but by the time most people are 9 or 10 years old, their cohorts thoughts and beliefs are more important than family even. So their core values are very much generationally induced. And then you have to look even closer. You have to look at the individual to know what motivates them personality wise, what are their individual needs are. So we're going to look at each one of those individually. These are basic needs, and I arranged them so it spells basic. It makes it easier to remember. Belonging, acceptance, significance, identity, and consideration. And so those are easy to connect with people. It's easy to motivate people along those lines, and many people do. Many people use simply that. So I'm going to bring you into a system. I'm going to motivate you by making you feel like you belong, by making you feel like you're significant, by by being considerate of you. Those things, and that's quick and easy to do because it works for almost everybody. It's also useful to know which of those is most important because although those are basic needs and we need all of them, we need them in varying degrees. So are you more driven by a sense of significance or identity, significance or consideration, right? What's your biggest of those? They're all there, but what's the biggest, right? And so if you think it's significance and it's really consideration, you might also be off base. But at least that's a broad-based way to know how to motivate people because everybody needs those things.
yeah. And from a kind of a tribal or primal perspective, we all have a need. One of our core basic human needs is to belong or be accepted by our tribe or by our clan, because it's very we can't survive very long out of the wilderness, if you will, by ourselves. So belonging and acceptance are huge, sort of primal needs of the human being.
Yeah, if we didn't have those, we could not be conditioned by anything except punishment, pain. Pain would be the only conditioner. But because we have these basic needs, we are easily psychologically conditioned.
So next is generational values. And there's 5 generations listed here, starting back with traditionals. We're now approaching their 80s. Then baby boomers who are in their 60s and 70s. Gen Xers who are in their 40s and 50s, and then millennials in their late 20s and 30s, and then Gen Z is the new workforce coming online today, if you will. They're the late teens, early 20 somethings. So that's another layer of consideration is what affects each of these different generational values. The Gen Z are very very tech savvy, very much about inclusiveness. Wanting to be included and considered in that way, whereas Gen Xers are more self-reliant, self-guidance. The Gen Xers were to a large degree were the first generation that was kind of the latchkey kids. Where mom and dad were both working households, so they were free to do their own thing more often. So they're more self-reliant, self-guidance kind of thing is one of their core values.
what you often find is many leaders today are from the baby boom generation. Or Gen X, but if you're from the baby boom generation and you're assuming that other people's motivators are the same as yours, look what motivates the boomers: recognition, position, money, significance. And then jump over to the other three generations and look at the top need of Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z: self-reliance. And if I'm going to micromanage you and one of your needs to be that is a work ethic and a value for you is self-reliance, I've just created this problem. If I think that what motivates me also motivates you, then I'm also off the charts. Because if we go to Gen Z, their primary motivators are trustworthiness, openness, and inclusion. They want to be included in things. Trustworthiness is huge because they look at the world and they don't trust big business, they don't trust government, they don't trust what's happening in the world. So their trust levels are very low, and they're motivated by things they can trust. And so we can't assume that because we have a need that they do too. And it's that reason, it's the self-reliance piece, it's the change in motivational motivators in the last three generations that has the Gallup polls showing 70 to 75% disengagement over the last 25 or 30 years.
And it hasn't been changing much.
Question, with the Gen Z being inclusiveness, they're pretty secluded. They've secluded themselves and aren't as active in society by using social media, and that is their way of expression. So it feels kind of contradictory.
Well, and that is because you're looking at physical inclusion, and that's not what they look at. They are on Facebook all the time. They are on Snapchat. They have a community. These are my friends, and they have 1,000 friends. No, they don't. That it's a whole different mindset, right? They're out there all the time. They're sharing everything all the time. They're putting it out to their friends, to their 1,000 friends, right? Where we didn't do that for our generation. Inclusion was getting together and physically, right? And getting to know one another. That's not the inclusion for them. But in that inclusion place, they want to be in the know. I want to know what's going on. And I don't need to talk to you. I don't need to come up and hug you. I just need to know what you're doing from time to time. That's their inclusion. It's
And inclusive
yes,
is including others.
yes.
Okay, got it.
So then we go down to core needs, and we're basing this on the core map designators: commander, entertainer, organizer, and relator. If you know what an individual needs, if you know how to recognize an individual and recognize what drives them forward, what their motivators are, and you can help them get their needs met, you're their hero. We love people who help us get our needs met. And so and again, another big issue, and I see it a lot because many leaders have commander in their dominant or secondary space, because only of the four styles, the dominant styles, only commanders seek to lead. The rest of them kind of inherit leadership roles, but commanders seek to lead. So in the leadership world, you find a lot of people with commander as a dominant or a secondary style. And the problem that often occurs is because commanders, if we don't understand other people, if we don't understand ourselves and other people, we don't understand what other people need. We assume that they need what we need. So if I need to get things done and to accomplish, I assume so do you. And if that isn't your primary need, if I'm working with a relator, for example, that's not a high need for them. That's actually a secondary. Their needs are to get along, to keep the harmony, to avoid conflict, right? And if I'm pushing you for action and results and accomplishment, in their mind, I'm creating conflict and I've just demotivated you because I don't understand.
There's also between needs and stress levels, right? There's a inverse relationship, right? As our needs are met, our stress levels go down, and vice versa. As our stress levels go up, our needs are not being met. So there's this inverse relationship. So if we want to manage our stress for ourselves and for other people, we've got to manage our, having our needs met or having the needs of others met so that their stress levels go down. Because once our stress levels go up, our cognitive ability starts to decrease as well, and so people make poor decisions with their prefrontal cortex, part of their brain, if you will. They lose the ability to think, to concentrate, to focus, to make think things through, make wise decisions.
They get a lot testier, they get more impatient, they get less tolerant. So a lot of bad things happen as stress goes up. So then we get to the center of this chart, which is the action piece. And the first part of that, the first bullet point says promote self-leadership, not only in yourself, but in your people. Because if people are self-led, and they're not going to be self-led unless they're intrinsically motivated, and they're not going to be well self-led if they don't have emotional intelligence. But emotional intelligence, again, comes from effective self-leadership. So it's why you promote self-leadership. I give you a project to complete, and if you're leading yourself through that project, if you're taking responsibility, if you're being disciplined, if you're determined to be consistent in the way you approach things, that is self-leadership. And that leads to all kinds of beneficial things. So the first thing would be promote self-leadership in yourself and in other people. Creating a healthy workplace environment. I've identified 4 environments and only one of them is healthy. We have a no consequence culture. We have a no mistakes culture. We have a firefighter culture. All of those are unhealthy. Also what I call structured freedom culture. And within a structured freedom culture, you have the structure to know what will and will not get you in trouble, what is and is not expected of you. And as long as you function within the structure, you're free to perform. That's a healthy culture. And people who are free to perform, what that says to them, I trust you. I believe you're capable of doing your job. And as long as you do your job within this structure, I'm happy with you. That's absolutely an intrinsic motivator. So they provide a financial paycheck and an emotional paycheck. The emotional paycheck is the intrinsic motivators. And it's ultimately more important than the financial paycheck. I've actually had people say, that I get paid really well. I've got really good perks, but the environment is so stressful. I can't stay here. And they will go and even take a pay cut in order to find a healthier environment.
Yeah. One without the other doesn't work long term, right? If you don't have a financial paycheck, you can't put food on your table or a roof over your head. But if all the job is a financial paycheck, then it pretty soon just becomes a job, and a job is replaceable at any time. But an emotion, so we need to provide people an emotional paycheck, and that means getting them aligned according to their generational values, their core needs, their core motivators, so that they feel a sense of fulfillment and meaning and importance and significance that comes back from the energy that they give into their job every day.
So to remain accessible, listen and value employee input. I often refer to a visual that was provided by Jim Collins in Good to Great, his book Good to Great, where he talks about the mirror and the window. That analogy says that great leaders, when things go right, they look out the window and at their people and they go, my people did this. They give credit to their people. They do listen. They do value input. They do know what their people need. And they give credit to their people for all the good things that happen. When things go wrong, they look in the mirror and say, what could I have done differently? So they take responsibility for when things go wrong. Poor leaders do the reverse of that. When things go wrong, they look out the window and they go, my people created this problem. And when things go right, they look in the mirror and say, aren't I wonderful? I am so smart and intelligent and capable.
Yeah. One of the worst things we can do, this reminds me of my millennial age daughters, who one of her biggest complaints about her work is they're always doing employee surveys, right? You know, how are we doing? Are we doing a good job? You know, what could we do better, whatever. So they're always constantly doing these surveys and asking for input, but then they never do anything with it. They never make any changes. In her view, they basically ignore the input that they get and do the same old thing that they've always done. So that very quickly becomes a demotivator when you ask for input and then do nothing with it, because it's it's really kind of a sign of disrespect. It's like, don't bother asking if you don't want to listen and do something about it.
Right. So that consideration piece is, even that broad-based consideration need is gone. It's not there. We're not considering your input. So to make sure people are in the right job doing meaningful work, and meaningful work is really important there, because even if your job is something menial, like sweeping the floors, like you're the janitor, if you understand the value in that, if the janitor knows how they contribute to the organization, how they contribute to the customer base, how they contribute, then it becomes meaningful. It's not the job, it's the meaning you attach to it. Convey the value of employees' contribution to the company. Then that's what makes work meaningful. That if they understand what their value is, why are you here in the first place? Why is it important that you be here? Provide flexibility and work-life balance. Big, big, big issue for the last 3 generations, Gen X, Millennials, and Gen Z. Is work-life balance. That's a big motivator for them. Provide opportunities for professional and personal growth. When I was doing research on millennials, I started my research project with Gen Z, and it moved into millennials because it was a long-term project. But one of the things that millennials, which is the largest generation, by the way, in history, it's even larger than the baby boom generation. So there are a lot of millennials out there. One of the things that they conveyed to me, because I asked a question, what would keep you in a job? What would keep you there? Well, one of the things was consideration. They want to be considered. But the second to that was, I want to be learning all the time. When the learning stops, I go. And it doesn't, not just personal, not just professional learning, but personal and professional. I want to know that I'm growing, that I'm accomplishing something, that I'm moving forward, that something is happening. And when the learning goes, I go. And I heard that a lot from millennials. So fair and reasonable compensation. I don't know of too many people that are unreasonable in what they think. There are those, obviously, who think they're worth a lot more than they actually are. But that's the minority, not the majority.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that come to mind there for examples is, again, kind of using my millennial daughter as an example, is one of the complaints I hear from her is that, you know, the fair and reasonable, when she hears of other people in the company getting bonuses that are equal to half or more of her whole annual salary, and they get it all in one fell swoop as a bonus, you know, she's like, they make more than in a bonus than I make in a whole year, kind of thing. That feels very disheartening, very demotivating for her. The other thing that, you know, on the fair side of things is making sure that people are paid fairly, both across departmentally, because, you know, she's got an example where there's another department that has very similar kinds of levels of people and responsibilities and knowledge and expertise required, but they get paid, you know, 10 to 15% more than her department gets paid. So she's like, you know, and she keeps asking for justification. Why is this? And she keeps getting, you know, kind of BS answers from the HR department. So there's there's a disparity between departments, and then another disparity that, you know, a lot of people talk about, is the you know, or the wage gap, if you will, between the highest paid people in the organization to the lowest paid people in the organization. And Sherry, you were sharing some research that you'd read one time about what that means.
Yeah, I have a colleague. Yes, and Kathy's pointing out the male versus female disparity is definitely there still. But I have a colleague at Vanderbilt University who created a values profile, and he did a lot of research around values. And what he discovered is that the larger the gap between the top dog and the lowest paid, the larger the gap, the less honest the top dog is, the less honest, and the less effective they are. And when you, and initially I thought, well, why would that be? And in examining it, what I discovered is their ego gets in the way. They think they're all that important. They think they're worth 100 times more than the person, the lowest paid employee. And so they're in this ivory tower, completely separated from everybody else, and their ego keeps them there. That's why they're less effective. And that's why they're dishonest, because there is then that imposter syndrome happening too. And I have to protect that. I have to pretend I'm as great as the pay scale suggests I might be. So, you know, that gap is interesting, that it's inversely effective. And realize that personal satisfaction is more lasting and more motivating than money. People will leave a job. Most people who leave jobs leave the leader. They don't leave the work they do, they leave the leader. So action steps, this just so that you can step into that action space too. Focusing on your motivators and employee behaviors rather than, that's what most leaders do. Most leaders focus on their motivators. What do I want? And the behaviors of an employee. Turn that around. Focus on their motivators, what motivates them, and your behaviors, what I do with it. But it takes more work to do that, obviously, because you have to know your people. You have to know yourself. In order to focus on your behaviors and their motivators takes more work. And a lot of leaders don't do it. Be sure you're not one of them. Go back.
Sorry about that.
Don't assume that you know what motivates people. So we just saw on the generational thing that your motivators are likely not theirs. Ask. It's easy now. If someone had asked Kevin, do you want to watch? Would that motivate you? They'd have found out real quickly, no, I don't want to bloom and watch. I haven't worn a watch in years. And if I did, I wouldn't want an analog watch. I would want something that would tell me how many steps I took today, right? You don't reward, and I see this happen all the time in organizations where they reward, quote unquote, exceptional behavior by giving them additional duties. Oh, this is a great worker. I'm going to give them more to do. That is not a reward. That's a punishment. Instead, give high performers more autonomy, trust them to do their job well, and give them the freedom to step out there and shine, because they will. They're high performers.
Yeah, and give them higher level duties, but make sure you take away some of the lower level duties, right? So don't just keep piling on more higher level duties, more duties, and more duties, and never take anything off of their plate, because then that's going to lead to burnout as well.
Exactly.
All right. So time for questions, comments, thoughts, feedback.
And all of you can unmute yourself if you would like to, just because we're now in discussion mode. If there's anything you want to back up and talk about, let us know.
So, one thing that's of interest to me is these are all great things to understand. And I think inherently, those of us that have had leadership positions understand a lot of this. Not specifically, this is great information. But I think the real quandary becomes, how do you uncover that? And I know it was mentioned, ask people. But oftentimes that's not the best route to true understanding. I think asking comes at the point where you're verifying what you think you've uncovered. But what are some ways that you find effective at determining what people's motivational primary motivators are?
We we teach people, one of the things that we teach people that's really important is how to read people. We all tell the absolute truth about ourselves non-verbally. And even if people won't talk to you, won't tell you verbally what they want, they will tell you non-verbally if you're paying attention. And so one thing is we all exude an energy. So example of that, commanders, the energy that they express that people pick up on is that statement you often hear, lead, follower, get out of the way. They have that energy about them that's a power energy, power and confidence and capability. And even if they don't have a confident, capable position in the world right now, they still do that in unguarded moments. Entertainers are come talk to me, and there's that fun, high energy thing. So we can see the essence of people to know what the need behind that is. If we know the needs that go behind what we're looking at, that's something you can use. The other thing is there momentary behaviors. So understanding what an agreement posture is and what a disagreement posture is. So for example, if I'm talking to you and you lean back and cross your arms, I know I'm not connecting with you. You disagree. You're not telling me you disagree. There you go. Yeah. So you're telling me you disagree. You just now, the posture you just took right now is a consideration posture. This hand to the chin, what you just are doing, you're listening and you're considering. You're telling me that non-verbally. And so if we understand nonverbal communications, we can know a lot about people, even if they're not willing to tell us what that is.
Well, I'm a very considerate person, so.
I can see that. You probably do a lot of chin stroking, don't you?
I've got two of them, so.
There you go.
Yeah, Cindy typed in the chat box, would it be possible to get a copy of the generational slide? Yeah, I'll certainly send you a copy of the slide, Cindy.
David, one of the things I did when I had a staff is that I would spend a short amount of time, not hours in that, but I would set up appointments with each of my staff members just to see what's going on for them and just getting to know them, what's important to them, what's going on in their life, things that they would want to share with me for consideration in doing scheduling and doing all that kind of thing. And based on the questions I was asking, I was getting to know a deeper level of them. And that made a difference in, number one, my ability to ask them to do something extra when we were in crisis mode, or it actually got them to jump in when we were in crisis mode so that I didn't even have to ask. They knew I cared about them, and then they cared about me, and they cared about what they were doing. And so in a sense, that was one way. And I do know that at one point I had 25 employees, so I had notes, I had files, I had things. But then, and at the same time, I would do some general things like a little Valentine's card for everybody. If they threw it in the trash, fine. If they kept it and thought it was special, fine. But they knew that they were, quote, equal in that I didn't do something for one person that I wasn't willing to do for another.
And that's really good. The other value in doing what you're describing, Kathy, is that if you can catch people in unguarded moments, we tell our absolute truth in unguarded moments. Even really guarded people that you can't read because they're so guarded, when you start talking to them about things they enjoy or things that are important to them, they move into an unguarded space, and then you can read them. You can know where they're coming from. So yes, that's really good advice, is to just get to know your people, talk to them.
Yeah. Anybody else have any examples of extrinsic motivators that were demotivating for you?
Me?
For you, or for experiences that you had, in organizations that you worked with or for? Or...
Well, I've been self-unemployed since 1991, so most of my motivation is internalized. But I did take a respite from that in the mid 90s to work for the state chamber here in New Mexico, which is primarily a lobbying group. And I did it because I was friends with the executive director and he needed somebody to help build up their marketing and membership. So I was working there for 2.5 years and he resigned. And I went to put my resignation letter in too. And he said, no, you can't quit. And I said, why? He says, I can't quit if you quit. So that's just the way that the board was looking at it. And so I stayed on, and the new boss came in and he says, I haven't decided if I am going to keep you on my team or not. And he happened to do it right in front of my assistant and the bookkeeper and all this kind of stuff. So I stood up and I just said, I'll just tell you, John, I'm fine with that. There's all kinds of reasons why people aren't able to work together, but I have chosen to stay on. So if you'll let me leave of my own volition, should you come to that conclusion, I would be much be very appreciative of that. He was kind of shocked that I responded that way. And then after 6 months of proving to him that I was the cheese, I went in and put in my resignation. So I think that kind of goes toward desire for recognition, because it wasn't a really high paying job, as you might guess, working for a chamber of commerce. But there was the recognition that what I was doing was important, and his inability to comprehend that I was staying on, even though I really didn't care to once Jerry left. It kind of pissed me off. It took me 6 months to exact my revenge on him, but I left him hanging high and dry.
Yeah.
And what you just explained, David, happens a lot because people hang in there and they're just looking for a way to, you were essentially disengaged. You were just hanging in there to prove a point, right? So that's happening 75% of the time, up to 75% of the time in this country. People who are just hanging in there but are not truly engaged in the job for one reason or another.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think about him bringing that conversation up in front of your assistant and your bookkeeper or whatever. Thinking, is that a very caring approach, on his part, to bring that up in front of other employees? It's like, what are you thinking?
Yeah. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
It was
Way
kind
to
of funny though,
instill-
because I was doing pretty good. My program was recognized as the top marketing program of the year by the National Association of Marketing Executives for Chambers of Commerce. Pretty high honor. And to get that honor and then him come in and tell me I'm not probably worth it was really demotivating. So I increased my productivity in terms of new memberships by 25% in that 6-month period before I put in my resignation. Just to kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So in that case, a demotivator became a self-motivator for you.
Right.
I'll show you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kathy, you were going to say something?
Well, it was not just uncaring, it was not knowing anything on how to read a room, it's not a way to, you don't dress someone down with their staff there. It's possible, David, that by the time you left, your staff would have been already gone because they knew the writing on the wall, that they weren't, if you're gone, they'll probably be gone.
I do believe that primarily happened.
Yeah, not surprising. Not surprising.
All right, so we're coming up on the top of the hour, so we want to wrap up. Next month's topic is going to be influence. Sherry, you want to give us a little teaser on what we want to cover there?
Well, essentially, your most valuable skill is to be able to influence other people. And in order to influence, we have to go right back to where we started, which is what motivates them. What motivates them to want to do what I want them to do. So if we can influence people to do what we want them to do and like it, we're golden. And that's what we're going to be talking about, is what influences what prevents influence.
I was glad to share about the series on LinkedIn, and I don't know if that reached anybody, but if you would send a flyer or something like that to us for the next one, I'd be glad to try to disseminate it by email to some of my contacts. I think it's worth it.
Excellent.
Awesome.
We'll definitely do that. Thank you, David.
Absolutely appreciate that offer, David. All right. Well, thank you all for
Thank
joining
you.
and participating.
Well,
Thank you.
I have to make, before we sign off, I have to make one comment here. Mark, you look entirely too comfortable.
Well, I got my best friend here, so I don't know how I can be anything but.
Well, I couldn't even see your best friend. He kind of blends with the sofa.
Very calming.
So
All right, everybody.
thank
All
you
right.
all for joining us. We really appreciate having you here. Again, please invite anyone you know that for the next ones coming up, and we will send you a link to this recording so that you have it.
Yeah, the next one will be on March 13th, second Wednesday of the month for March is March 13th at the same time, 10 a.m. Mountain Time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All.